When doing the work, does it matter whose business you're in? This is an interesting article. It's a topic that comes up with people who have been doing the work for a while. And some people almost are afraid to look at certain turnarounds, look at certain aspects of what they're exploring, because they're afraid of being in the other person's business. So let me read the newsletter. When doing the work, does it matter whose business you're in? Good fences make good neighbors, says the famous poet Robert Frost. And staying on my side of the fence is good. Byron Katie often invites us to ask ourselves, whose business are you in? And I love this question, whose business are you in? It often shows me where I'm in someone else's business. It's almost always stressful to be in someone else's business because I can't actually control what other people do. So when I ask myself, whose business am I in? And I see I'm in someone else's business, it starts to bring me back to, oh, wait, I would be more comfortable here in my own business. Just noticing that I'm in someone else's business can be very helpful in bringing me back to my own business. But it's easy to take this principle of not being in the other person's business too far, especially when doing the work. So the work is a way to come back home, right? I'm stressed because I'm out in someone else's business. That's really what causes the stress. So by definition, when I'm doing the work, I'm moving from being in someone else's business, which is stressful, to being in my own business, which is peaceful. That's the whole process of what the work is about. But sometimes you have to go back into the other person's business when you're actually doing the work in order to get out of their business and come back into your own. It's kind of strange, but here's an analogy that can help. Let's say I hopped the fence, crossed over into my neighbor's territory, and let's say that not only did I trespass while I was there, but I actually built a little fort on the other person's land. This is just an analogy. In order to come fully back to my business, it's not enough for me to just come back to my side of the fence. To really be free, I need to go back across the fence to his side and take down my fort, dismantle it, take all the lumber away, and leave it in the same state that it was before. I literally have to trespass again in order to completely remove the effect of my previous trespassing. So the same is true when doing the work. Let's say I'm judging somebody for judging me. The stressful thought that I'm working is, he thinks I'm a failure. And when I think that thought, I'm literally trespassing over into his business. But by doing the work on this thought, my intention is to come back into my own business. The turnarounds are always what point me back. So turnaround to the self would be, I think I'm a failure. Turn around to the other, I think he's a failure. These are things that I'm doing. So this is in my world. Turn around to the opposite, he doesn't think I'm a failure. All of these turnarounds are an invitation for me to come back to my business. But I might end up resisting the turnaround, he doesn't think I'm a failure. Sounds like, oh, wait a minute, that's in his business. How do I know what he's thinking, right? He doesn't think I'm a failure. Could be, I could be back over on the other side in his business. And I might say, oh, I can't know that. That's his business. And what I do in doing that is I discredit the turnaround before even considering it. And in doing so, I would miss a piece of freedom. The problem is that I left my fort still intact on the other side of the fence. What was the fort that I left on his side? The fort is my belief that he thinks I'm a failure. I constructed that fort when I was over there in his business in the first place, before I ever did the work. I built this whole story of how he thinks I'm a failure, he thinks I'm a failure, he really thinks it, I have all kinds of proof. I have a big story there. But if I, in doing the work, if I don't cross back over into his business and dismantle this fort, this story that I've created, then it will just keep on standing there for a very long time. And a piece of me will always remain in that trespassing position. Basically, I'm thinking for him, believing that he uh, that he thought I was a failure all this time when it may not even be true. So dismantling the fort means going back into his business and coming up with alternative ideas of how he may actually not have been thinking that I was a failure. And this is so important. I may not have any concrete evidence of this. I may not know anything about how he actually thinks. I may not know a lot about his mind at all. But even circumstantial evidence, even just possibilities, are enough to help me start dismantling my idea that he thinks I'm a failure. I may be simply left with, I don't know, and that's enough. The fort has been dismantled, even if I just come to the place where, I'm just not so sure anymore that he thinks I'm a failure. I don't have proof that he doesn't think I'm a failure, but I don't have proof that he does think I'm a failure either. And so I'm left in a very neutral place. Notice in all of this, I've never talked to him. I've never asked him. I've never gotten anything from him at all. I'm just going back in, looking at the story that I created of him and finding the possibilities that the opposite could be true. And that balances it out. So my turnaround examples neutralize my original stressful belief. I was in his business when I originally thought he thinks I'm a failure. And I'm in his business when I find examples for the turnaround. He doesn't think I'm a failure. In both cases, I've crossed the fence. But now these two equally possible ideas neutralize each other. And because these two opposites, he thinks I'm a failure and he doesn't think I'm a failure, have kind of neutralized each other, I've literally taken care of that story, or I've reduced that story, and I'm free to return with an open heart to my side of the fence. So this second crossing back into the person's business was actually necessary in order for me to dismantle what I had previously constructed. Sometimes it literally takes a thorn to remove a thorn, or in this case, it takes going into someone's business to get myself out of somebody's business. So here's a quote from Byron Katie. My love is my business. Your love is yours. You tell the story that I'm this or I'm that, and you fall in love with your story. What do I have to do with it? I'm here for your projection. I don't have a choice in that. I am your story, no more, no less. You've never met me. No one has ever met anyone. And that's from Byron Katie's book, A Mind at Home with Itself.